Hello, I am Morgan Lawson, and my pioneer that I am doing this PowerPoint over is Lev Vygotsky. Lev Vygotsky is famous for two theories. First, his social development theory, and second, his zone of proximal development, commonly known as ZPD. Lev Vygotsky was born in Orsha, Belarus on November 17, 1896. He was born to proud parents Celia Moisevan Vygotsky and Semencha L. Vygotsky. He was the second of their three children. In the map, this is Belarus. As you can see, Orsha, his birth town, is marked with a circle up in the right-hand side of the country. When Lev was 2 years old, his family moved a few towns away to Gomel. At this time, Belarus, the country, was in the Russian Empire. There, his father was a banker, while his mother stayed at home with the children. His mother, Cecilia, had trained to be a schoolteacher, but chose to stay at home with the children, for she saw the need for her family to be her #1 priority. The Vygotsky family was described as a well-to-do family and was of Jewish ancestry. His primary education also came from the local school in Gomel. He performed well enough to go on to the University of Moscow in 1913. During this time, it was a high honor to be recommended for the university level. This is a picture of the University of Moscow when Lev Vygotsky was attending in 1913 to study medicine. Lev went to study medicine at the University of Moscow, but quickly saw his likings of legal study, which made his decision to switch to law. Outside of schooling, he personally self-taught himself philosophy. With 4 years of law and graduation behind him, he went back to Gomel, his hometown, and started his teaching career. Setting up a research laboratory at the Teachers College of Gomel was next on his list. 1924 was a turning point in Mr. Vygotsky's life. He competed in a competition in Leningrad in the early part of the year with a presentation over his methods of reflexology and psychological investigation. This presentation earned him an invitation to work as a researcher starting in the fall at the Psychological Institute of Moscow. He decided he would move into the basement of the institute while he worked upstairs in Moscow. Also, in 1924, Lev married Rosa Novana Shmykov, who had also trained to be a teacher just like his mother. Later in the marriage, she gave birth to 2 daughters. An essay Vygotsky wrote titled "Consciousness as a Problem in the Psychology of Behavior" was published in 1925. A year later, followed by Educational Psychology, was published in 1926. After his 2-year recovery from tuberculosis, in 1927, he took on theoretical and methodological work in the crisis in psychology. He worked on a research program which would help develop higher cognitive functions of logical memory, decision-making, and comprehension of language. For this research, he took a group of students to help him. As equals, they studied his phenomenon from 3 different angles. He introduced the notion of zone of proximal development, ZPD, and redescribed concepts in psychology that had become popular. His zone of proximal development he made capable to describe the potential of human cognitive development. Vygotsky is the first psychologist to document the importance of private speech. Private speech is considered as a building block between social and inner speech. In the diagram, you can see how we get to private speech and communicative speech from socialized speech. These 2 things then take on to combine to be inner speech. In 1987, it was found in Vygotsky's notes that private speech does not merely accompany a child's activity, but acts as a tool used by the developing child to facilitate cognitive processes, such as overcoming task obstacles, enhancing imagination, thinking, and conscious awareness. Here are 2 of Lev Vygotsky's famous quotes over his work. The first one reads, "Inner speech is not the interior aspect of external speech. It is a function in itself." The second one listed here reads, "Learning is more than the acquisition of the ability to think. It is the acquisition of many specialized abilities for thinking about a variety of things." During the 1930s, psychologist Vygotsky was influenced by 2 German-American scientists, Colt Goldstein, who is pictured on the top, and Kurt Lewin, who is pictured on the bottom. Both of these men were involved in a group of the Gestalt psychology thinking who believed in holistic theories. Lev Vygotsky died in June of 1934 at the young age of 37. He died from the contracted tuberculosis he had been plagued with since 1925. He left behind his wife of 10 years and his two small daughters, Gita and Asia. His work was criticized by the Communist Party. So much of the Western world had not heard of his work until the 1970s. Vygotsky died while dictating the final chapter of his book titled Thought and Language. Lev Vygotsky's legacy is a big one for all of the observations and research he made in psychology. He has made countless contributions to psychology, especially in the areas of human development, historical cultural theory, and development of thought and language. These fields have truly flourished with the help of Vygotsky. His work is still being explored today, and new discoveries are coming from the help of his work still. Today, he is the 83rd most frequently cited psychologist. The zone of proximal development, commonly known as ZPD, is what Vygotsky named the sweet spot where the instruction a child receives is just beyond his or her current level of capability during independence. The ZPD helps determine the differences between what a child can and cannot do. It also refers to the skills a child can do with assistance. These activities need to be challenging enough to help him or her develop new skills by building on to the existing knowledge. Instruction should focus on material and skills that are attainable. Students are most receptive to their own level of ZPD because to them it represents the next most logical step in their skill development. For teachers, this helps in determining whether a certain lesson is needed for the entire group or just a certain set of individuals. It is difficult to identify who is ready for more challenging instruction and who needs extra time in a lesson. ZPD can help educators more effectively guide all students in their early childhood learning. Vygotsky's work was influenced by Marxist ideas of social and historical development. His social development theory is the foundation of the child development psychology. Many of our 21st century knowledge about how learning and development takes place came from Vygotsky's ideas. He believed that all cognitive development happens through social learning and is dependent on experience. This cognitive development cannot be understood without reference to the social and cultural context within which it is embedded. Vygotsky leans to the nurturing side and sees intelligence as something changeable and dependent on learning and culture. For example, a young child given a jigsaw puzzle may spend hours playing with it and not work out how to put it together. However, with some help from a parent who displays and explains to the child strategies for finding the correct pieces, for example, look for the straight edges, the child can learn how to put the jigsaw together and very soon will start to succeed at putting the jigsaw puzzle together on his or her own. Thus, the interaction with the child's parents spurred Vygotsky's cognitive development.